Hello, everybody. Welcome to this presentation. We thank you very much for being here. My name is Marcela Ruiz from Zurich University of Applied Sciences in Switzerland. Together with my colleagues Jolita Ralite from the University of Geneva and Xavier Franch from Universitat Politécnica de Catalunya, we are happy to introduce our ongoing investigation related to the use of goal models in situational method engineering. For our research, we have prepared an evaluation protocol which is detailed on our iStar 20 paper. To execute the protocol in this video, we guide you through different concepts that will help you to understand the object of study. But first, what does it mean to use goal models in situational method engineering? Here we have a requirements engineer who needs to elicit software requirements. But which is the most appropriate method to use? Among the options, our requirements engineer could probably use prototyping, interviews, etc. For instance, if the requirements engineer selects interviews, conducting individual interviews are recommended. But the question is, how do we come up with all the criteria that is necessary for each technique? Or how do we better explore the criteria to decide which technique we need to use? Let's explore the situation in more details. The building of a new method is based on the reuse of parts of existing software engineering method chunks and approaches, redefined as method chunks and stored in a method chunk repository. Building the method chunk repository is called method engineering for reuse because the objective is to reuse method chunks from the repository. Each method chunk is analyzed under the lenses of the context criteria. As we saw in our previous example, if we select interviews, we need to ensure that our stakeholders are available. To facilitate this alignment between context criteria and method chunks, we make use of goal models. Since this is not a trivial task, in this presentation we explore how goal models can help us. Here we have the specification by means of an iStar model of a method chunk describing a typical requirements elicitation sessions. Requirements elicitations involves 4 actors with some mutual dependencies. The requirements engineer is in charge of delivering a requirements document. The stakeholders are the ones who need to provide the needs as requested by the method. These needs will be probably elicited only if the elicitation is well fit. And the requirements engineer commits to have the method steps followed. As you can see, this model is a template for any requirements elicitation technique. Of course, this goal model is abstract. Our main objective is to specialize it. Each dependency of this goal model can be aligned to the corresponding context criteria. As we already know, the context criteria depends on the requirements elicitation technique we would like to use. Let's check this situation. For each technique that our requirements engineer is considering, she can evaluate the context criteria for each method. For example, as discussed in the case of selecting interviews, consensus and people per session are 2 context criteria we need to consider. Let's now align the context criteria with our goal model. Let's focus on our quality conflicts avoided, which has a context criteria C6, which is consensus, with a value of high. This is explained by the fact that avoiding conflicting talks during interviews is important to ensure proper development of the interview. This goal model is ready for reuse. The chunks repository is ready and contextualized to be used in different situations. After exploring existing method chunks, let's jump to a practical case where we can actually use them. The University of Geneva wants to develop a new app to allow quick access to different university information services, like announcements of events, school calendar, course program, access map to different campuses, etc. The IT department of the University of Geneva is responsible for eliciting the project requirements and conducting the requirements elicitation sessions. Our iStar model for this setting would have this shape. The demand for such an application was initiated by a group of students, so they are the principal informants. The administrator is the one responsible to create the information and make it available via the mobile application. This information defines the scope of the project. Once the scope is known, how do we better select the most appropriate method chunks? Here we introduce the concept of method engineering by reuse. The main objective is to facilitate the use of contextual goal models for assembling situation-specific methods. As it was described in the previous slide, the first natural step is to start by defining the project scope. The project goal model describes main actors and dependencies. Once the project scope has been defined, we specify the necessary method requirements. Okay, for specifying the method requirements, there are 3 steps. The first one is defining the purpose of the method as a strategic dependency model. The intended method has to be modeled as an actor. Here we have the requirements elicitation method. In case this scope of the method is broad, the method can be represented by several actors. In this case, we have just one. The different participants of the project, actors defined in the project scope model, have to be represented as actor in the method purpose goal model. Here we have the student, the administrator, the requirements engineer, as well the IT department. The second step is to model the strategic rationale model for each actor of the project. For this activity, we recommend the 2 following guidelines. First, we need to express the needs of each actor regarding the requirements method. In this case, we have, for example, that the move-up requirements need to be elicited. Next, we need to specify tasks and resources related to each quality and goal of our strategic rationale model. For example, here we have the different tasks that we need to conduct. For example, for the goal ensure diversity, we have the task students from different campuses must be involved. Finally, assessing the project-specific contextual conditions and representing them in the strategic rationale models as contextual annotations. The guidelines for contextual goal models are as follows. First, we need to select the context criteria that is fit to this specific project. In this case, we select the location and the people per session as an example. We need to assess the values. For example, if the students are located in different campuses, then the value for the location is far. Then we need to attach these annotations to the different elements to our iStar.0 elements. So to the goal, qualities, tasks, and resources. Then the goal of each selected method chunk has to fit in the scope of the method, which means to be a sub-goal of the method goal. In this crucial step, an iterative matching process among the organizational context and the repository of method chunks is conducted by the method engineer. During this process, the method grows by recording the relevant decisions that are necessary to make in order to select the method chunks, and also, once they are selected, reflecting them in the model to be able to analyze the consequences of adopting such a method chunk. For example, in our case, we start by selecting or addressing our actor student. From the 2 context criteria, people per session and location, included the contextual goal model, one of them look critical, which is this one, that the location is far. And here we see that the only elicitation method that behaves well for stakeholders that are located far away are questionnaires. We select the corresponding method chunk. So finally, the goal models are assembled and specialized. The elicitation method that is selected is questionnaires, and it is expanded with the corresponding elements of such a method chunk. The dependency from the super method to the stakeholder needs is kept at the level of the super actors. So here we have the different actors, the elicitation questionnaires, the requirements elicitation method as a super actor, our student and stakeholders as super actor. Now you are ready to be one of our subjects. Please participate at the iStars 20 workshop, and let's keep in touch regarding this study preparation and the results from our study. We thank you very much for your attention.